Hello and welcome to the Brooks Breakthrough Podcast. I am your host, Ashley Brooks. Today, I am joined by Daniel Gillaspia, retired attorney turned business consultant and founder. Throughout college and grad school, Daniel experienced many opportunities to travel and even live abroad. Through his travels, he earned and redeemed millions of rewards points and travel miles to inevitably get hooked on the amazing world of credit card rewards. This led him to start UponArriving in 2014, an authority in the credit card rewards and travel space. UponArriving covers the latest developments in credit cards, airline and hotel loyalty programs, and a variety of travel topics. This then led him to found WalletFlo in 2019, an app that helps people optimize their credit cards by earning more points, maximizing savings, and getting them the best offers. His knowledge and expertise has been featured on National Geographic, Forbes, Smithsonian Magazine, US News, and Business Insider, just to name a few. Daniel and I are going to be discussing his journey from attorney to world traveler and entrepreneur. He's going to share stories from his travels and how you too can get the most from your credit cards. So without further ado, Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. Now, for those who aren't watching the video recording, people may think that you're 50, 60 years old if you're a retired attorney. You are not. You were in your 30s.
Yes.
So you had a small stint as an attorney, correct?
Very small stint. Yeah, probably only about 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years maybe.
Got it. Well, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So before we get into all of that and the companies that you founded, share a little bit of your background and kind of some of your career in life before UponArriving and WalletFlo.
Sure. So I'm from Houston, Texas. Grew up there. Went to school at Texas A&M. Majored in philosophy there. Pretty much knew I was going to go into law at that point. Went to law school at UC Berkeley out in California. And about midway through sometime, I pretty much realized that that's not what I wanted to do with my life, to go into law. And so kind of an awkward position to be in when you're in the midway through law school, but my heart was just not in it. But at the same time, I did not want to drop out. So I decided to just stick it out and finish up. So I finished up law school out there, went and took the California bar exam, which was an interesting experience, mostly because my computer basically crashed on me in the middle of that horrifying experience. But I did pass, thankfully, despite that, and went on to get my first real kind of lawyer job in Houston, came back to Texas. And it was interesting because the very first day that I got there, a big case arrived on our doorstep over there, and it was a money laundering case that related to, if you remember, do you remember Astro World? Yeah, the theme park. So it related to the property that it was located on after it was torn down. And this is big like RICO case. And the first day I was there's basically like this huge conference room just filled with boxes, just stacked up and just lining the walls. And my supervising attorney just came over and said like, hey, like, I need you to make sense of these documents, and there's like hundreds of thousands of them in there. And so that just kicked off like a 4-year journey on this one case that was like pretty much 90% of what I did over there. And we ended up winning the case, and it was like a really big verdict, and it was cool just to be a part of that case. But after that case was over, I pretty much walked away. So I tell people that I graduated from law school, passed the bar, worked on one case, and then retired. It's like basically my like law career pre-UponArriving. So
Got it. Do you follow any cases like online now? Any of the big ones that come up?
only like some of the like most high profile cases. Like sometimes it's interesting, or like things that pertain to travel. It's always interesting. Like if there's something going on with TSA, do they have the right to search your cell phone or something? Like I'll get into that a lot of times with articles, but I'm not really like into like the law, like above the law blogs or anything. I kind of like to distance myself from that world.
Got it. No, completely understand. What led you to want to even pursue law when you were younger?
I think it was a number of things. One was just like, I felt like I had strong writing skills, research and writing skills. And that seemed like, you do like a career quiz and it's like, oh, go be a lawyer. And it's like, okay. It seemed kind of like a cool thing to do, like kind of like a flashy profession. And then like, you realize like, it's really not like, but I think it was a combination of like trying to lean into my strengths, trying to do something that would be interesting, that would like lend me some like respect or something. And yeah, that was pretty much it probably.
So you did 4 years and then you became an entrepreneur. Did you ever think that you would start a business or become an entrepreneur?
Well, I always wanted to. That was like my secret, like that I kept like to myself. Like I wanted to be my own boss and do something that I really loved. Those were like the two things. And I just felt like closed in. I don't know, like it felt like, and I bet you a lot of people that have gone to like med school or any kind of professional school or vocational program like feel this way, where it's like you go do it and then you feel like you have to do that for the rest of your life or for like the next few decades. And it sort of felt like that ship had already sailed, and that ship to like pursue your dreams had already sailed. And I was like, well, I should have figured this out 3 years ago, before I went to law school. And then eventually I was like, man, this is like weighing too heavily on me like 24/7. And the thing was, I didn't really like hate my job either. Like I had like a pretty good like situation. I liked my boss, and like the work was outside of like legal discovery and things that just like no one really likes. It was like pretty enjoyable or rewarding, but I knew it was not like my passion, and so I knew I had to get there, otherwise like I was going to fizzle out at some point.
Yeah. So walk us through what led you to starting UponArriving.
So starting UponArriving was basically, I just knew I wanted to do something in travel. So if I go back to like, this would have been like 2011. It was while I was in law school, I took an internship abroad in Australia. And so I was doing refugee law, which was like really fascinating stuff, like probably like one of the best life experiences that like I needed at that point. And so that was kind of like the law side of what I was doing. And then on the weekends, we were just running around Australia, like exploring stuff. And it seemed like we were always doing something super like fun, and skydiving or like just exploring Sydney, Bondi Beach area. And it was in Australia that I realized like my like level of interest and passion for law was like, here. And then travel was just, through the roof. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to incorporate travel into my life to like be happy. And so I think UponArriving, I started that when we moved out to the UK, when I went to go get my master's in law in London for a year. And I was like, okay, I can have the law stuff going on and then the travel stuff going on and figure out a way to make it work. But eventually it was just like travel just kept taking more and more of my life over. And so that's kind of what UponArriving was. The goal of that was to find a way to make travel like my profession.
When did you first get noticed by publications? Because I think I had seen years ago that you had something in National Geographic. But was that your first one, or did you have other publications before that?
There were some other smaller things that had happened. I'm trying to remember the very first one. I think it was Smithsonian. So I did a write-up on Antelope Canyon, this really cool slot canyon in northern Arizona. And so they linked over to my content, and I was like, oh, this is like really cool, and it like kind of gave me a little bit of validation, like, okay, my writing doesn't like totally suck, like my pictures aren't like garbage, so let me start like doing more of this. And then it became like, you just start getting more mentions here and there, and then it's sort of so it's probably like around 2015, sometime around there.
Got it. Okay. And so how often were you traveling then? Was it, so when you first made the transition out of being an attorney and officially retired, how often were you in other cities?
At that point, so like I've never really been a like crazy traveler, like going someplace every week or something,
Okay.
It's been more of like taking big trips. So we've done like, month-long trips, and we just go all around the world, hit up all these different countries. It's like get a bunch of content while you can, and then come and like rest. And then like usually like smaller trips kind of sprinkled in every for a while. There've been times when we were hitting it pretty hard. I think of like when we first got like the Southwest Companion Pass, which allows a companion to fly for free with you. So like we were going like every other weekend in one summer. But for the most part, it's been kind of like doing some like really big trips, and then that's where like we get a lot of the content from, and then we sort of just like chill out for a little while.
And how do you break it up? Because so I was reading some of your articles and you're very detailed in everything. So you just had one yesterday that came out about Alaskan Airlines, and you're literally showing pictures of all the different like leg rooms
Yeah.
and prices for all the different flights from all these different cities. Um, so I mean, walk us through that, because that to me, that makes sense as to, okay, if you're doing one trip and putting that much content into a post. But are you, how many posts are you doing or blogs are you writing for each trip?
So I always have a target of around like 40 posts per trip to
Oh,
try to
wow.
like tie it together. And hopefully there's like a couple of different storylines that go into that to make it just interesting and kind of different. So a good example is like we were in Hawaii earlier this year, and we went and we kind of had a goal. One was to highlight like Pearl Harbor and all of the different destinations around there, right? And
Yeah.
like obviously like some crazy history there, like super interesting. And then on the other side, it was um, tracking down all of the original Jurassic Park filming locations. So like
Mm,
Hawaii, there's like a ton of them, right? So you get to go and experience it, and then show other people, okay, this is what you want to see. This is how you get there. Like, watch out, you're
yeah.
going to trespass here, or, whatever it is. And then like, so we try to like bring it together and kind of have a theme so you can like have a hub around your content versus like
Yeah.
back in the day, I just go somewhere and then it was just like, well, we'll just write about this restaurant and like this park. And it was like not really like cohesive. So I think
Mm,
that's like one of the keys we do now.
got it. How long does that take you to do? Like once you come back from your trip, how many days are you spending creating all that?
It's usually like a month. Like if I'm
Mm,
hitting a couple of articles a day, it'll probably be like a month straight. And then it's like you sort of just get like sick. Like I was so sick of Jurassic Park after we went and did all that stuff because
yeah.
you like you're watching all the movies, you're trying to like get absorbed into it, and then it's just like the nonstop research, and then like by the end of it, I was like I just, like never want to see Jurassic Park again. But I mean,
Yeah.
of course now I'll watch it. But so yeah, it's usually about like a month after a trip like that.
Got it. It's funny. I think it was the summer after I graduated from college. We went to Hawaii with my dad and my stepmom, and I don't think weren't even married yet. They were like engaged, and so it was like a
Uh-huh.
big trip for like the families to come together and do that. And so we went, and I remember we were with my stepmom's in-laws, and so we were going to meet them at Pearl Harbor. And it was like I think like the first time my dad and my stepmom like had to do directions together. We never made it to Pearl Harbor.
Oh, you never did?
They got lost. And I was like,
Oh,
people do this every day. I don't know how we got lost, but it was this thing to now when we look back on it, it's like, at least we did all of these other excursions. Maybe one day we'll.
yeah, yeah. We've definitely gotten lost before, or more commonly, it's like we'll miss. There was one time in Portugal, we missed this exit on this really long bridge they have by Lisbon, but we missed it like multiple times. So we drove back and forth on this like super long bridge like 5 times. It like
Yeah.
added like an extra like hour or two to our trip. Such a mess, but yeah, it
That's
happens.
funny. But you guys went back to it though, right? You guys eventually found it.
Yeah, yeah. Eventually,
Yeah,
yeah.
we got so tired of driving around that we're like, we give up.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's funny that you guys saw yours. When you made that transition from attorney to like entrepreneur, what was that like? Because I know for a lot of people, there's a struggle of having um, that structure that's created for you and that stability, and like every other week you're going to get a paycheck, and then going from almost eating what you kill. You have to be the maker of your stability. What was that like for you?
I think the first part was just like so it was the expectations that was like difficult for me to first get over, like the expectations that I felt like I had for myself and other people, that like I need to be doing law. So like once I got broke loose of that, I felt like it wasn't like that difficult because number one, I devised like a pretty long exit ramp off of, getting away from law into being an entrepreneur, and also did it like backed by data. So when I first started to generate some revenue, see some growth, I was like, okay, this is what's going on now over the span of, 3 to 6 months. So this means in another 6 months, I should be around here. And I remember like I even told Brad, my husband, I was like, look, this is like basically where we're at right now, and this is what I think should happen. And if it doesn't, like I'm just gonna give up vlogging because I've been doing this now for like a few years, and like it, like we should already be here. And so luckily, like that was 2018. That was the year it actually panned out.
Mhm.
So we had that kind of longer exit ramp, which I would recommend to anyone that's kind of ditching their profession if they can do that. that helped tremendously. Um, but the routine side of things, I mean, yeah, it was definitely a break in routine, but it was the break that I wanted. It just got to the
Yeah.
point where like I wanted to structure my own routine and not follow someone else's. And so yeah, it really wasn't, I didn't really have a lot of fear of like, is this gonna work or not? I mean, because I didn't know. I mean, it may not work, but um it was more of the fear of like of regret, like of
Mm,
not trying to pursue my dreams. Like I knew like 10, 20 years down the line, I'd be looking back and being like, wow, I would just regret everything I did if I didn't give it a shot. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, I basically have no choice at this point but to make this happen. And then that whole thing of like, what do they say? Like necessity is the mother of invention or whatever. It's like your
mhm.
back's against the wall. You have to make it work somehow. So
Yeah. How was that for your husband? Because I always say that our spouses are like our almost our angel investors because it's not just finances for them. Like they're our biggest supporters, our biggest cheerleaders, even and getting into real estate. The first few years are really hard because you're building your business. And so
uh-huh.
my husband has like been that support for me and reminding me like, hey, like you are really great at like you have knowledge, you're really great at what you do. You just have to keep persevering. So what was that like for him?
I think it was a little difficult for him, especially um, the first few years when I was just kind of spinning wheels and not really making progress. So before I kind of ditched the attorney thing, I think maybe, I mean, he was like extremely supportive, but I think, and I don't blame him for probably feeling this
Mhm.
way of like, hey, like you're spending a lot of time doing this thing and it's not really like producing results. So there, he may have been kind of wondering like, okay, is he going to keep doing this? Or like, at some point, is he going to move on? But yeah, I mean, he was just, super supportive
Yeah.
and, always wanting to find a way to make it work. And so like, I could not ask for a better spouse. And now we actually like work together. Like he helps out, like you were just mentioning some of these data points in the articles, like he helps with the research, gathering that stuff. And
Mm.
so, we live together, we work together. So we're around each other 24/7 and it works. And so I know that it's not an easy thing to make happen. So, I'm just really grateful that it actually works out.
No, it is really great when that happens because I know, especially during COVID, when spouses were forced to be together all the time, for us, we enjoyed it. We had a baby at that time. And um, my husband, we both come from hotels, but so he was working in hotels at the time when everything happened and they had cut him down to 3 days a week. And so 3 days, 2 days a week, he was at home with us. And so it was just this thing. Hey, he's going to spend a lot more time. And I feel like we grew closer. There were times we definitely annoyed each other, but we grew closer. And I've seen other marriages that, we have one in our family that they spent so much time together during COVID that they split up.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard to see, but share a little bit about what COVID looked for you guys, because I know that you couldn't travel, which is your job. So how was that for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, COVID was the ultimate, I feel like, challenge as an entrepreneur. Number one, not being able to travel, which is just sort of like on a personal level, like an outlet, to get that
Mhm.
release and to get that travel fix. So, that's not happening. From a business standpoint, watching, all of the search traffic go down because I'm writing content for people who travel. If people aren't traveling, they're not
Mm,
searching for that content. So traffic volume going way down, revenue from the ads and everything from the banks going way down. They were clamping down. It's also whenever, I know we'll get to it probably more later, but when we launched WalletFlo was February 2020, like right when the pandemic came out. So, I'm in travel, I'm in the credit card and bank sector. Both of those were just like completely shaken up by COVID. So it was a very scary time. But it taught me to, one, prepare. Like I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially early ones, you sort of like when you get that first wave of success and then you're like, oh, I figured it out, like I cracked the code. And then it's like, well, no, you should be preparing for like the inevitable downturn
mm,
that's going to
yep.
happen like at some point. And so like I learned that like the hard way, but like that lesson is now like permanently like stuck with me. So
Yeah.
that was good. But and then just just having faith that okay, like this is like, don't panic, like do this. And I kind of pivoted a little bit with some content. I started writing about things related to the pandemic and things I didn't really care to write about, but I was like, well, I have to pay the bills, right? So I have to do this. And so
Mm,
did that for a while. And so yeah, I mean, just I think the ultimate lesson was just, okay, prepare for the downturns whenever you're up, because as an entrepreneur, that's just what like life is all about.
Oh yeah. Do you follow Patrick Bet David at all? Do you know who that is? No. So he has a kind of a podcast, but also a YouTube channel called Valuetainment. They have a lot of really great content. I
Oh, okay,
mentioned him.
value.
Okay, yeah, I mentioned him a lot on here. So he talks about how as entrepreneurs, you should never be comfortable, but you should always be fearful because there's always something that could knock you down. So it is very, like you said, it's very easy for us to like when we get a win, for us to have this high of like, man, yeah, like I can do this. Like I'm the stuff, and but then you get knocked down and you're like, oh, hey, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
And so it throws you off, but I feel like when you get thrown off, it's a good reminder to stay humble and you still have to put work into and you always have to be prepared.
100%.
So, and I want to get into WalletFlo. So correct me if I'm wrong. You started this because you were juggling something like 20 credit cards, correct?
Basically, yeah. I think I'm around like 16 now. It kind of always fluctuates based on how things are, but just trying to manage those cards, keep up with all of the annual fees, the perks. One thing the banks have done in the last few years is they've relied more on breakage. So they want to give you, monthly credits that they know you're probably going to forget to use or not optimize. And so you have all of these opportunities every month to capture value. And a lot of people are just not able to like remember or, know how to use them. And so that trend's been picking up more and more. And so I felt like spreadsheets, like they're helpful, but you can't really you can't really manage everything in an optimal way in real time. And so like, let's build something for that. And then just for other purposes related to credit cards, if you want to know, am I eligible for this card? Because they also, people like me that were in on this back in like 2014 or whatever, it was like before the banks put in a lot of like restrictive rules. So you could go and get like the same credit card every 6 months and just 100,000 miles just coming in, every few months. And then the banks were finally caught on and were like, okay, we need to do something. So they put in all of these rules. And so now that's what WalletFlo kind of helps you navigate is like, okay, am I eligible? Like how long until I can get this card? So that's really where it came from. And yeah, so we just put that together.
So is that what you guys were doing? Were both of you getting credit cards and getting the 100,000 miles and just knowing, hey, we do it every 6 months or every 12 months?
Yeah. So we were like back in like, especially I'd say 2015. I really feel like it was 2016 when credit cards rewards just really kind of exploded for people. Like the Chase Sapphire Reserve came out and then like everybody was getting it. But it was before that when it was more like kind of like the Wild West, like you could kind of like take advantage of things if you really knew what you were doing. And so that's where we got like, just millions and millions of miles and we're able to do these like around the world trips, like first class, 5-star hotels, everything. And, we had one trip where it was like you would have paid out of pocket like 53,000 or something. We paid like, it was like 500 or something or under 500 or like, so these like, we'd pay like 1% of whatever that total value would be of that trip.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Have you now that I know that you fly business and first class or yeah, business and first class a lot. Have you flown coach at all? Like when's the last time you flown coach?
It's funny. So we just came back from Alaska and we actually did fly coach. And it was like my
Okay.
first time in like a while, especially I was in a middle seat in economy. And I was like, oh my God, like I have not done this in a while. And absolutely hated it just because, you never know like who's going to be sitting next to you,
Yeah.
like, and I had like pretty good, but like I also, I researched stuff so much now that I know like kind of like all the etiquette that other people should know. So you're in the middle seat, you have both armrests, right? That's like standard etiquette. So like whenever the person on the window seat is now like creeping up on my armrest, and then like all I could, my mind just going crazy. I'm like, this person doesn't know. Like I need to tell them. So it's like, it's just like so
That's
like,
funny.
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it was definitely kind of like a reminder of like, okay, you know, I need to like just chill. Like economy's like not like that bad, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So there was a trip I went on. Um, I don't fly first class a lot, but the first time I did, I think it was to Florida or something like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I think like on the way back, I had to fly coach. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to stand in line. This is terrible. And then you like have to like pass everyone coming in. Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
funny,
that
like the psychological stuff it does to you.
the worst example of that was when we finished one of our around the world trips. We flew. It was called the Etihad Apartments. awesome first class. You have like a bed and like all this stuff. And so we went from that, we landed in New York, and then we flew our last leg back home on Southwest. So we went from like your own, like bed and like a shower and stuff to like Southwest. And it was
Yeah.
just, yeah.
That is funny. So now that you have, as a consumer and customer, used a number of hotel brands and airlines, when you look at all the trips that you've done, what would you say are the brands that are doing it right and just excelling at service and quality and experience?
So I'm a really big fan of Westin. Like that's like my go-to hotel brand. Like I love Westin. The bedding, amazing. Usually like a really solid breakfast. The rooms are usually nice. They tend to be pretty good with upgrades too. So like big Westin fan. Is when it comes to hotels. For airlines, we're talking like U.S. airlines here. I would say I've kind of recently been impressed with Delta. So I grew up, or lived a lot in Houston, so I flew United a lot,
Mm-hmm.
Southwest. Recently moved out to Arizona, so we were flying American, with Phoenix being a hub. But we've been trying out Delta, and we flew them on just a few days ago, and their first class like was great, like really awesome service. Their Sky Club in LAX was really nice. And yeah, I just felt like I don't know, maybe the service was a little bit better than what I've had on some of the other legacy airlines,
Yeah.
but I'd say those are like two of the brands that kind of stick out for me.
Got it. Now, I'm not going to ask you to name names, but when you look at the ones who are definitely struggling, if you could tell, the heads of those airlines or even hotel owners, just little things that they could tweak that would make a big difference, what would they be?
So the biggest thing, and it's been on my mind recently, is to a couple of things. Well, one is to like take advantage of an opportunity when something goes wrong, like because that's when you can like really show what your brand is all about. And I think like a great example of this was we were at the Ritz-Carlton in Hong Kong, and I was surprising Brad. We were getting taken there, and I just wanted to go all out for once and rent a Rolls Royce to transfer us. And
Mhm.
he's like obsessed with them, and so I was like, it's going to be a surprise. And the car was actually like 10 minutes late or something like that.
Mhm.
And so like I'm kind of like scrambling because the guy from the hotel is coming up to me and he's like updating me on like where the car is, and then Brad's like standing right there, so I'm trying to tell him like, hey, this is like a surprise, like don't let him know. And anyways, they arrive like 10 minutes late, and the driver gets out and he's like super apologetic. He's like, I'm so sorry, like this is not happening. I'm like, well, like it's 10 minutes, like I barely even like noticed that y'all were late, but
Yeah.
okay. And so they waived the whole transportation fee. It's like a
Oh,
$300
wow.
fee that we would have had to pay just
Oh,
because
wow.
late. And like to me, not that I expect every like a courtyard to do that, but like that is the opportunity to like set your brand apart, is to like
Mhm.
when something goes wrong, like don't like get pissed at like, oh man, we messed up or like whatever, like take it as like an opportunity, like, oh, we can set our brand apart here. Let's put some kind of protocol in place so that we can, maybe flip a 2-star review into a 5-star review, because
Yeah.
that's, I mean, and brands that don't, we stayed at a hotel recently, and I kind of want to call them out, but I won't. But they don't respond to any of their reviews online. It doesn't matter. You give them a 1-star or a 5-star review, they don't respond. And I'm like, man, do y'all realize like people will change their reviews if you explain to them what's going on, you apologize, or
Yeah.
whatever, or you throw them some points or something like. So that's like the biggest thing that I'm like surprised sometimes. Because I'm someone that I like to call things out to like the managers, half because it's like useful for me and my content to be like, okay, how are they going to respond, and then kind of
Mhm.
like get to that. And then the other half is like, well, this, like our bath water came out brown, like, okay, you should know about this, and like what are you going to do? And so it's always just interesting to me to see how they respond to their
Yeah.
shortcomings, basically.
So I mentioned that my husband and I come from hotels, and so I love the industry. I love talking shop. I don't ever want to work in a hotel again, but I love it, and I love the people that come from there. And it's interesting because so in a few weeks, I'm actually going to be interviewing a mentor of mine who is also a mentor to a number of hotel owners across the country, and we're going to talk about customer service because it's such a big part of the consumer experience, customer experience. And so my thought is I don't know why we haven't even gotten there already, but like we're going to be more automated. We're going to deal with machines more because in not just hotels, but in, let's say, a restaurant or anywhere, when I go somewhere and the service is bad, I'm like, oh, you're the reason why you're going to be replaced by a robot. Because for me, I'd rather go and order something at a kiosk than see someone who's unpleasant. I think it was like 2 months ago, I went to go pick up glasses because I had to get a new prescription. And when I went, the girl at the front desk did not like even look up to talk to me, nothing like that. And it killed, like that stuff gets me. And
Yeah.
so I went to the guy who was helping me get them, make sure they fit right. See two other groups of people come in. Again, she doesn't acknowledge them visually, not pleasant. And I'm like, I have to say something. But when you can tell if you tell that person something, they're not going to take it well and they're not going to try to fix it. And so you're just like, you're so annoyed because you know nothing's going to happen. So I go to her and I'm like, this is going to sound really weird, but can I go buy you breakfast? And she starts laughing and says, what? I was like, no, I know it sounds crazy. Multiple people have come in here. You're not looking at them. You seem really unpleasant to deal with. Will breakfast help you? And I'm trying not to seem like a jerk, but I'm laughing too. She laughs and I'm like, she's like, no, it's okay. I was like, are you sure? I'll pay for it. And she said, no. I was like, okay, well, if you change your mind, let me know. Anyway, so I leave, but I'm like, man, how do you have those situations? It is frustrating. And I love that you test it to see how are they going to respond, because so many of them don't know how to respond, or they'll get defensive about it and not take it as an opportunity, as you said.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the next few years, because I feel like we're, especially for select service hotels, I think, and again, I'm surprised that we're not there already with seeing more kiosks in select service hotels. But are you guys mainly staying in hotels, or do you guys do Airbnbs as well? Because I know that's something that's certainly affecting hotels, has been affecting hotels, and is going to continue.
So we're like exclusively hotels, pretty
Got it.
much. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we've actually stayed in an Airbnb. Oh, I think we have once. But yeah, it's like really rare for us to go to the Airbnb. Not because, well, there's part of me that's like, how many hidden cameras are they going to have in here? But like,
Yeah.
it's also like, I don't know, with the content we do with the loyalty programs, it always makes
that makes sense.
that route. Yeah.
Do you think if they created a loyalty program, you would explore it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be, super exciting.
Makes sense. And I love that you say Weston. Weston's my favorite. I have literally gone to their website and bought their lotion because I love the Weston smell.
Oh, yeah.
We had a Weston Heavenly bed before we got the bed we have now. But it used to be in one of our guest rooms. And so that's my diehard brand. Before they were purchased by Marriott, Starwood was my favorite out of all the family brands. I want to go back to WalletFlo. So share with us a little bit of what you're seeing as far as like the consumer side. Are you seeing people with somewhat similar background to you of having 10, 20 credit cards, or is this people that are using it who maybe have like one or two who are trying it out?
So the average user has like 6 cards.
Interesting.
So there are some people that have a lot like I do, or even like more. I mean, some people are up there in like around 30-ish.
Interesting.
So it's average 6, and it's kind of just people that have usually, I don't know, maybe two airline cards, a hotel card, and then a couple of cards that earn transferable points like Chase or Amex or something like that. And they're big on the premium cards, so like the MX Platinum cards with really high annual fees, but they come with all these different credits, which is one reason why the app was created in the first place, is to manage all of that. But perks that give you lounge access. So that's kind of like what our standard user is kind of like when it comes to the type of cards that they have.
Got it. And so I know that usually we don't ever recommend credit cards, and especially being on the end, like we work with investors and we love to help people, understand financial literacy, financial freedom, all of that stuff. And so we usually tell people if before they start investing, if you're not really good with managing debt, get that under control before you do this. Is that something that you'd recommend as well? Like this probably isn't for someone who isn't paying off credit cards consistently, correct?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, because at some point, the rewards cards, just the APRs are just so high, the interest rates are just so high that it's going to eat into any value you would have received. So, I mean, only in like limited cases, if you have cards with good 0% APRs and you trust yourself, okay, over the next, 18 months, I have 0% APR and I can do something with this. But those don't tend to be like the really strong rewards cards anyway, so they're not really what WalletFlo is geared towards. But yeah, I would say if you don't have a good grasp or control over like your credit card spending, debt management, then WalletFlo is probably not the best app for you to focus on.
Got it. I know that you've been to a number of places all over the world. Is there a trip that you and Brad are either planning or really want to do in the future to experience?
Um, well, yeah, so we want to do a trip. We've been kind of tossing around this idea, another round the world trip where we adjust the routing so that we potentially escape jet lag the entire time. So it's kind of like shorter segments, kind of like playing around with the sunlight that you're going to have depending on the time of year, kind of heading up or down the latitudes depending on, what time of year it is. But because that's always been the big drawback of these trips. Like, we've just gone across the world like crazy on, on these legs. And it's fun, but then you get there and you're so jacked up, and then by the end of it, like your whole internal system and clock is just completely screwed up for sometimes like quite a while. So we're like, man, maybe we can do this. And I was looking at the routing, getting across the Atlantic, like not that difficult to do, I don't think. I mean, if you were to travel from say like Brazil to Portugal, like that's like 2 time zones. So or from New Zealand to Hawaii to maybe Alaska or the Pacific, like there's a way to do it. So that's kind of the idea we're tossing around. I think it would be awesome to see if it could actually play out in practice. But I think that to me is like the most exciting experiment.
Yeah. Have you ever worked with a nutritionist or a specialist who can help with that to figure? Because I have a friend who he works with athletes and CEOs who travel a lot. And so he'll literally give them a regimented schedule of like what to do on the plane, what to take, when to sleep so that your body's at its maximum capacity.
I haven't worked with anyone. I mean, it potentially would be exciting, especially for a trip
Yeah.
like that to kind of optimize it. But I've seen things like the problem that I see is that it just seems to contradict, like, because everyone's body's different. So some people are like, okay, like go to sleep as soon as you get on the plane, and then other people are like, stay awake the whole time. And so it's like, well, it kind of depends, take melatonin or like don't take it. Like, so I think it feels like one of those things where you just kind of experiment and see what works for you. But I mean, maybe also I just haven't got good advice yet too. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll see if I can connect you with him and see if he can be a resource for you. This is a segment I like to call the 4 Ws. I'm a firm believer that you are what you watch, you are what you listen to, you are what you read, and you are who you hang out with. So for the first one, what would you say you watch? Is it more TV? Is it more social content? What does that look like?
So I don't really watch a lot of things. I mean, it's rare for me to get into a TV show. Yeah, but when I do, then I'm like all in. So like recently we watched, I don't know if have you ever seen The Godfather movie? Yeah, so it's The Offer. It's on Paramount Plus, and it's about like the making of The Godfather and like all the kind of crazy stuff that happened. And like I love shows like that because it's about like creating something and just all the pitfalls that happen, and it's also just like interesting. So that's actually one of the few TV shows I think I've watched recently. So otherwise, yeah, it's usually things related to my domain of like SEO or marketing or something that I'm watching something on.
Yeah, interesting. No, that makes sense. When it comes to what you listen to, so I know you don't watch a lot of stuff. Are you the same in that what you listen to is geared towards kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, for the most part, music is just sort of like random, like upbeat remixes and things. Usually just like after a hike or something, I'll listen, in the car, you just kind of like jam out on the way back to the house or something. But there are some podcasts out there though. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Andrew Huperman podcast, but it's like definitely my favorite. I've gotten a lot. He talks about jet lag and stuff too on there. He kind of has like a neuroscience approach to just like life, and some really good advice in there. And I also like his style. He's like very detailed and organized and everything. So, but yeah, and usually I kind of go through like seasons almost, where it's like I call it like resurfacing, where like I'll get super immersed in things and watch a lot of podcasts and things like that, and then kind of like go back down into like the ground level of like getting work done. And so that's kind of like just how I take in otherwise it's so much, and I find myself like new ideas coming in before the old ones can settle, and so
Mm,
I kind of don't end up retaining as much as I'd like to.
yeah. No, that makes sense. So when it comes to what you read, are you more podcast or do you like the traditional reading a book?
Usually the stuff I read is like kind of, I don't know, it's definitely like nonfiction, like instructional stuff. Like I've
Mhm.
gone through a lot of like the traditional self-help books and kind of
Mhm.
things that everyone's kind of read, but also things like that. Like right now I'm big into astronomy, so I'm reading a lot of like astronomy
Mm,
books and just trying to kind of pick up on that space a little bit. But I'd like to read more fiction, but every
yeah.
time I think about it, I'm like, well, I could be doing something that's like feels more like productive. I know there's
Yeah.
value to fiction, but I just can't always like wrap my head around the value, I guess.
No, same. I'm the exact same. I know that there are lessons in them,
Yeah, yeah,
but personally, I'd rather read lessons from real stories,
yeah.
more so than fictional ones. But I get that. So with your astronomy books that you're reading right now, has there been any big takeaways?
Yeah, I
Anything
think the
that stood
biggest
out?
thing is I'm just constantly trying to wrap my head around like how vast the universe is. Like,
Mm,
so we bought like so we live outside of Tucson in Arizona here, so we have
mhm,
really dark skies, perfect for astronomy. We bought like this big, it's called like a Newtonian telescope, so it's like this like huge thing, and so I was able to finally see all of these things I've always wanted to see, like the planets, Saturn, Jupiter, but then
mm,
also like the deep sky objects like galaxies, nebula, and it's like a little like
interesting.
smudge a lot of times. This galaxy you see, it's like it's nothing like the James Webb telescope or like
Yeah.
it's gonna pick up, but it's still like, oh my god, I'm looking at something that's 100 million light years away. Like right now, like I'm looking at it,
Yeah.
um, and just the fact that it took 100 say million years for this light to come through this scope and then hit my eyes, like that's something like I'm
Mm,
always trying to like process, because I don't know, some people kind of get like freaked out by that idea, just like of the universe being so big, but to me
yeah.
it's like kind of like comforting in a way, because it's like you just put everything into perspective, you know what I
Oh,
mean? Like,
absolutely.
so that's kind of like where I'm at, and but I love it though, it's always interesting.
Yeah. No, I love that because it keeps you humble. It reminds
Yeah,
you that the world doesn't revolve around you.
100%.
When it comes to the people you hang out with, if you took the people that you choose to actively hang out with, what would you say are common characteristics?
This is a really interesting question, because I feel like people in my life that I'm close to are like come from vastly different walks of life.
Mm,
Um, and so, one thing though I will say is that I tend to be drawn to people who are building something or
mhm,
interested in building things. And like I don't like small talk like at all. I'm like really bad at it. And so that's also a thing where it's like I like people that are, they want to talk about like, okay, what can I build right now, what can I work towards, and like that to me, like I can talk with someone all day about things like that. And
yeah.
so I think that's kind of the common thread with the people that I regularly kind of keep in communication with, is they all are kind of drawn to that same idea.
Do you ever feel awkward in that? Because I can relate to, I hate small talk. And my husband will tell me, he's like, why do you have to be on? And I was like, because I want to talk about these things, but I don't want people to think I'm weird by like getting real deep and personal right away.
Right.
Because for me, I'm such a curious person, similar to you. Like, I want to know, like, hey, what are you doing right now? What are you learning? Like, what
Yeah.
almost like I don't want to say I'm being selfish, but part of me is one, I'm actually interested. And two, it's like, I want to see what I can take from it. Like, I want to see what I can learn from you.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that?
Oh yeah, I always feel like, especially because it's hard to know. Like sometimes people surprise you, and then and they're down to talk to it, and you're like, oh, this is awesome, But other times it's like, uh, especially if it's a group setting, and there's like 5 people, and then like I can feel the other people kind of pulling away from like getting down deep into something. I'm like, oh man,
Mhm.
that was like such a good opportunity to like investigate this thing that's going on. But yeah, and I think that's just um I don't know, I'm an introvert, and they say like introverts are kind of more geared towards that. I don't know like how true it is, but maybe
Yeah.
that's part of it. But yeah, it's definitely that thing where I feel myself always wanting to go deep into something, and then some people are like, you don't always have to like have this intense like philosophical conversation
Yeah.
about like everything. So there's truth to that, but sometimes it kind of gets missed.
Yeah. No, I have a really good friend who he's very much a sales guy. And so, and I like, cause he helps me in a lot of stuff that I do. And so he's really good at like giving me direct feedback on certain things. But there are times I'm like, man, you never talk about your family. I want to talk about your family. Where you cut? Like, I want to talk about your parents. Like, let's talk, like, let's get deep. He's just not that type of person. And so I'm like, okay, all right, we'll just talk shop. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
instead of
I
philosophical
feel like you
things.
can test it out sometimes. Like if you you kind of get a little intimate yourself, like you reveal something about yourself, and then like if they don't reciprocate, then it's like, okay, you're probably not feeling this. But like if they do, then it's like, okay, then can we go like a step further? Then you just
Yeah,
keep going.
no, it's funny. He's met like okay, so he's a friend who literally for Valentine's Day like came to lunch with my husband and me and we're like, all right, you can third wheel, like we don't care. And so he knows so much about us, like and we know certain things about his personal life too, but it's just funny because he's just always on because you never know who could be a potential client.
Mhm.
And so we go to like the same restaurants a lot. And so for him, he's like in his sales world and it's like, okay, so maybe it's changing scenery. I don't know.
Yeah, the
Now you have me
environment.
thinking about
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, so before we wrap this up, I want to ask if what kind of feedback would you give other people maybe wanting to step out and become entrepreneurs and maybe they have an idea similar to you have to what you had and they want to make that leap. What kind of encouragement can you give them?
Well, a lot. I mean, one, like I said, is to, think things through with like that long exit ramp. Like that's so key if you're in like a full-time gig and you're trying to do something on the side. Um, Try to team up. Like, so everything I did was always like kind of, I think they call it like a solopreneur or something like that. Just everything running by yourself. But as soon as I linked up with someone else, so I have this amazing co-founder, Assad, who's really smart, like Forbes 30 under 30, whatever, but he's just really good at his strong suit is just he knows how to just like attack things. You know what I mean? Like someone that just like here's a problem, like let's just drop a plan of attack. But he's also technical, so like that's he knows how to like run a technical team and code and all of that. But like finding someone who can um, complement your weaknesses, and because chances are if you're trying to do something especially technical, like you're going to need a two-person team at least. We have like a five-person team. We're still small, but like
Hmm.
you're going to need someone else. So like find that person that can help you. And the mentor thing, like that's I think my biggest weakness has been not having a mentor.
Hmm.
And that I think slowed down my pace. Like I basically feel like I could have accomplished everything I have in half the time or less if I would have just had a mentor that said, hey, this is what you're doing wrong in the beginning, because I was just not making good traction. So, those were some things I think that could help someone that's trying to get out and do something in the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'm gonna put in the description your like Instagram handle if you're okay with that. But is there anywhere else people can find you?
Just, UponArriving.com. We're getting ready to do like a full rebrand of the site and kind of
Mm.
like it's really like way overdue, but we're going to be doing some cool things there. So, what you see now is going to probably look a lot different in the next few months. And so, just be on the lookout, and we're going to hopefully be a little bit more engaged on social media. So, at Upon Arriving, I think is pretty much the handle for everything. But yeah, you can find me there.
Okay, and I'll put the link for WalletFlo as well, just in case anyone wants to go ahead and add their credit cards to the platform. They can. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. It was great getting to hear your story. And I know I've heard some of it, but I haven't been able to get this in depth. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It was great. And I think you're doing great. I'm honored to be one of the earlier guests on your podcast. And I think you
Yeah.
do a great job, very
Thank
natural
you.
at it. So I'm excited to see where your podcast goes.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully, as we grow, as you grow, maybe we can come back on next year or something and you can share some updates that you have.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, awesome. Have a great day.
All right, you too.